Honorable sisters, brothers, and friends, I now just turn on this internet and start recording. No prepared speech or even prepared outline. Although I always would not really croon a tune, I try to harmonize with the tune. So I never studied lyrics of songs. So I need the lyrics if I try to croon a tune. Well, it appears as though, with you beautiful girls, you appreciate at least what I present, and I thank you. Now, for fellas to write negative, I'm not talking to you, fella. If you don't particularly want to see my video, then don't watch it. Because you're either jealous or a negative nerd, because I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to all those beautiful girls out there. That's who you should be complimenting. You should say, well, I think you're not that good, and I can do better. Well, then do it. I see where my videos, they have some fella that's kind of tall in a business suit and a tie, and his pronunciation, etc. And he's probably a good speller, because my spelling is not good. And then I'm below him on the right-hand side, who you can select. Or they have a beautiful girl I just noticed, and it's Skyfall. Not that phony Brit they built up as 007. He's really 003 and a half, some half-ass BS they built up and became a tremendous hit. Just like their Nessie. Their Nessie, I've seen at least 3 times the actual man that built it and put it on that lake, and he did it as a gag to film it. And then his buddy joins him, because he sent this like wooden little contraption from where he worked at the hotel on the lake to his buddy at another hotel. It's the truth, and they know it. But hey, look what the money they're making by people going there, flying, hotels, restaurants, so forth, tourist souvenirs. That's the big money. They hit the jackpot with my 007. And I'm going to say it again, this time complete. This is how 007 started. I had proved that I could put forward the best solutions, or at least suggestions, regarding just about any discipline they said they needed to be resolved, or some maybe analysis of it. Do you understand? Now, it developed where this country was and may still be under a pyramid of power. Now, I don't think it's one man, but of the top group of the pyramid, there's probably one man that's of that group. But with J. Edgar Hoover, J. Edgar Homo Hoover, that criminally insane pedophile, Hoover was the point and the power. Then there was his homo buddy, who instead of me legally, publicly obtaining the patents, honors, and financial success, he said that his buddy was kind of a scientist and would get like patents. Well, Hoover was so bad and evil that I just couldn't bring myself to have any connection with that criminally insane Homo Hoover. So I told him, I said, look, I just can't, because it's a sheer drop. As soon as I realize there's any connection with Hoover, it's just a sheer drop. I can't bring myself to do what I want to do because of that criminally insane Homo Hoover. So they worked it out where then they would have somebody that would obtain my solution or suggestion of what best to do in various disciplines, and then they would relay that to Hoover. And that's the way it was done. I'll get right to the point. I obtained a renaissance. Now you look up the word, what it means, where it came from. I obtained a renaissance in the discipline of political science, called dirty politics by most for obvious reasons. Now, my original name was Joe Castellano. But as I kept doing things and higher, and especially theoretical mathematical physics, science inventions, it got to where they would say, he's the doctor. And then when I defended especially You Beautiful Girls, it was ethics was the title. But because they wouldn't have religion. You can't have religion as a title. You'd be violating somebody's rights. So under ethics is religion. But it's religious topic. Not ethics, a religious topic. But the anti-religious crazy nuts and weirdo would send me immoral, crazy pictures and do that to the girls. And they gang up on them. They had the U.S. divided into 4 sections with somebody in charge, and the one in charge of the U.S. was a grammar school teacher in my area. And I tried to get the fellow fired because he was a grammar school teacher using immorality. And that his wife with that fellow became insane. So now he had his children, and he would show his children. He'd watch porno, adult porno TV station, porno films with his minor children. But they are so strong that they turned it around and said, no, he's preaching. You can't preach on the internet. So they would call me a preacher. Now I'm Preacher Doc by choice, because I got so disgusted and bored with hype, plagiarism, especially about Einstein. So I said, well, what is man's greatest challenge? I have obtained the highest step in the state-of-the-art discipline of science, especially theoretical physics and most especially theoretical mathematical physics, advanced concepts in theoretical mathematical physics. Sent all my material because I didn't think they would let me live. And I'm not alive because they wanted me to, is because I narrowly, by split second, or by guile, and I have coordination. I was in cadets and I could juggle, say, 3 oranges at one time. So I have survived criminally insane Homo Hooverism, and anybody who tried to get him out, anybody he caught, they would relay to him. That was negative, got out. And those who tried to replace him died a violent death. I have that now in a 1-hour film, only, especially darn Google, says I can't get it back. I says, well, it's there. I know you have to keep those on file for 27 years, the federal government. You say 1 year or 5 years. And he said, well, fill out the form. I fill out the form, they won't accept it. I said, well, there's a form you said to fill out. And they won't accept me. So they have about 200 of some of my top, lengthy, precise work I've done in advanced concepts in theoretical mathematical physics and other disciplines. Cosmology, history, athletics, philosophy, literature, especially poetry. I even tried poetry in another language. Now, I started by saying, well then, who am I? Well, yeah, I think you have the right to ask that question. So as I was saying, I'm average height, 5'9". But the average height of those in the U.S. when I was young was only 5'7". It went up to 5'9" and was going higher. But there are now so many immigrants from Asia and from Mexico that the average height is actually gone down. But of, say, from Europe here, especially from the Scandinavian countries, and they used to call my grandfather like the tall Swede. Anyway, my opinion is this: everything in Hollywood is exaggerated. God. I'll get to the most important. Jesus is a tall, at least 6 feet to maybe 6'3", Caucasian, with blue eyes. I don't know. If you're in Asia, they say there was a Jesus there, but he was Asian. And he's slender, and they make him look tall because he's slender. I don't know what height he's supposed to be. But he looks Asian. I'd say maybe if he was 5'8", he'd be tall there. That's today. I'm talking about 2,000 years ago. Well, 2,000 years ago in the Middle East, and this is, I think, by the Jewish historian themselves, their average height was around 5'6", and most of them maybe were a little squat and swarthy, a little muscular. Well, if Jesus was tall and was 5'7", especially 5'8", then he was 5'7", 5'8". My opinion is that maybe he was as much as 5'9", but he was not the tallest of the disciples. They have him as a swarthy, tell you the truth, he looked like, they made him look like a pool room Jewish fella at Minty's pool parlor. Yeah, you get him in Europe, and he's more of a European. You get him up towards Scandinavia, and he's taller, more lighter, light hair, maybe light eyes, and maybe even some reddish hair. What is critical? Did he prove that he was the only begotten Son of God? By his miracles. Everybody else is human. It's called where he takes on man, but is really the Son of God, and he proved that. Well, I get to about who really I am. I always consider myself somebody that's noticed how to improve things scientifically. And then I majored in high school in physics. Was an A student in physics and math. Made 4 years high school in 3 with A's in physics and math. Well, there was a war on. And I received kind of like a crippling injury to what I was to now during the war, during the wartime. Well, it was a struggle. But when it came to science and invention, I did it just as good as I ever did, or maybe better. Because now I don't have an instructor like instructing me. I delve and resolve it on my own. You understand? Well, when I set up a secret meeting, because I was absolutely sure, I went through it like I had purchased the scientific equipment and performed the experiments, and how to use now Enrico Fermi's work of fission, from going from fission to fission fusion. Do you understand? So now we could obtain fusion energy. And I did it in such a way that it was done secretly at the University of Rochester, Advanced Physics Department, at their cyclotron building called the Atom Smasher. It's the only one in that area. Well, Hoover figured, this man, a World War II veteran, he's doing what I should do. I can't have him, that young unknown with the great scientist names, who will now work on it, because I insisted the sooner the better we have a super Manhattan project. Do you understand? So Reed, he said, hey, he's doing what I should do. I want to know then what else he can do so I can use that. So instead of doing what I thought they would do and should have done, that I would get a position as a science work employee, science tech on the peripheral of the great scientists, taking down notes and data while I studied towards a formal degree. But no, Hoover said, hey, I'm the power, and this is what I want to do. Well, it wasn't right, of course. When I found out that Hoover was Homo Hoover, called him a queer, and that's what I called the fellow. You got to replace this queer. Anything he said he had the power, they would tell him, go back to him. He was, oh, wise guy. And he was prejudiced, so he didn't just call me a wise guy. I'll show him. I'll have him now like my right-hand man. But when I want to, I can eliminate him, or etc. Well, it came to where I said, look, I think we got to get better results. I'm batting 1,000 was an expression used in baseball. We'll sometimes lose due to time. Why not try what I say first so we don't lose the time, or at least then it's nullified because of the time difference? Well, begin to try that a little more. But then Hoover, in his office, he's 1 foot higher than anybody else, because he's the point of the power and has more power than the president or anybody. And he has all kinds of power. Do you understand? Anybody who tried to get him out died violently. There was the great FBI hero, Melvin Purvis. Great FBI hero, great man, family man, so forth. He said, you know, it'd be better if Purvis was director than that questionable Hoover. When Hoover found out that Melvin Purvis says, well, if you just want me to be the director, I'll be the director. He got Purvis out of the FBI. Then Purvis was found dead. Hoover said he shot himself. It was suicide. The representative who died on the train, with the speech in his hand about replacing Hoover, I don't think committed suicide either. We get to the big one. President Kennedy. Now, I was there in Washington, fighting, arguing to get Hoover fired or at least replaced. Do you understand? But Kennedy and his brother Bobby, they talked it over and let me know, all right, so maybe Father Joe, as they say around in the movies, maybe Father Joe wasn't the one that was the pusher to get him up there and be pres. Maybe it was another Joe who has obtained a renaissance in the discipline of political science called dirty politics by most for obvious reasons. Do you understand? Now, they said, well, the next time I'll win, and he would have, regardless of who or anybody, Hoover or yours truly or anyone. He was that good, popular and doing that good. He's doing good. But Hoover, his buddy Johnson lived around the corner, and they would get together, and buddy Johnson would stay overnight sometimes. So Hoover set him up to have him down there in Texas. I didn't know. I was doing work on the peripheral of now called a super atom smasher and conferring with university scientists in reference to subatomic particles that definitely had work going into consideration of binding energy and of quanvels is what I call them, a quantity of matter at a velocity greater or equal to the velocity of light. Now, we get to then, who am I as you look at me? Well, I've studied all the scientists, their thinking, where they obtain their material from. Is it really theirs, or how much is theirs? And how valid is it, especially as we progress into the discipline of science? Because if you look at the history of science, all scientists are saying that the previous scientists were incorrect or improving on them. Do you understand? So, it's not going to stop with this plagiarist Einstein, especially. So I got so bored and disgusted, I said, well, what is man's greatest challenge? The discipline of theology. How did we get here? Why are we here? What best to do? And right now, the best for me to do as preacher doc is to expose this criminally insane Homo Hoover and criminally insane Homo Hooverists, and maybe do it poetically, because my spelling is not, English was not my first language, and English is a guttural language. While Italian is early Italian, while Italian, the words end in a vowel, and as you say them, especially kind of fast, you sing-song them. And maybe that's why they're such great singers. The words rhyme, and it's a little sing-song, a little bit of poetic presentation. But I lucked out. When I was young, you had, if you wanted to really be a PhD in science, you had to know German, because the official language of writing a science international paper was in German. Now it's English. Maybe not my English, my American English. Because when I spoke, everybody spoke the way I spoke. Nobody thought we had any accent. But when I would take my voice and play it back, good golly, I sound like a New York tough on a subway. Which reminds me of one of my favorite jokes is two great scientists came over with Enrico Fermi. And I have conferred with them at length. And one of them, I was at his home, we're having a cognac, and he says, I close my eyes, and he says, what you're saying is great, he says, but you scare me. I scare you, why? He says, you remind me when I first came to America, and I was on the subway, and it's getting late at night, and I hear those New York toughs. He says, I was kind of scared maybe I couldn't get home. Oh, I apologize. This is my speaking voice, and I played baseball. In my neighborhood, Joe DiMaggio was the top idol of everybody. If you didn't play baseball, maybe you didn't belong in my neighborhood. So I played baseball, and my idol was Ty Cobb, because I wasn't that. I found out Ty Cobb was quite tall, but I wasn't that tall, but I was speed. I had track speed. And in baseball, that's real speed. And Ty Cobb had the record of 96 stolen bases. And he did it. I think he actually did it, went from first to third on one pitch. And they couldn't get me out going from first to second, and so I started practicing going from first to third on one pitch. Now, all right, this is who I am. I'm slender, although now as I have put on age, I've put on weight. So I'm not the Flash, and a man I thought was real good was Joe Flash Gordon. He was acrobatic second baseman for the Yankees. And I would say I was from Rochester and the Rochester Red Wings of the St. Louis Cardinals. And I figured if I got to the Cardinals, we could beat the Yankees. And if I ever got with DiMaggio and Tony Lazzeri and Frankie Crosetti, I don't think we would lose a game, honestly. So I was the leadoff batter. It was called a holler guy. And they all spoke with this real baseball voice, especially the holler guy, the leadoff batter, the spark plug of the team, and I helped them win the championship of the Little League, that league we played. I mentioned Little League. I prefer Little League. You better believe that. Now I got 28 minutes. I want to try to maybe do this in 30 minutes. I've done more good in more fields than any man in the history of the United States. Edison maybe has more in quantity, and he has, number one, the electric light bulb. That's more important and more useful than my lightification stimulated electromagnetic beam. Lightification stimulated electromagnetic beam. Right? Took light and amplified it, reinforced it. It's an EM wave, and it's reinforced in a staccato to have a concentrated, staccato, powerful beam. And I said it was a futuristic, multi-purpose, coherent beam, going more towards, certainly now we're in it, or it's the 21st century. Yeah, in 19, up there they say it was the 20th century, and now it's the 21st century. Or am I a century ahead of myself? Because for years I would work on concepts in the 25th century and put that 25th C TMP. And then as I said, everybody started saying, well, he's the doctor. And then he's the preacher. So what do? I try to practice I try to preach what I practice, and practice preaching what best to do. And that is, if you beautiful girls appreciate what I put forward, thank you. If you don't like what I put forward, fellas, you don't have to watch. I'm not speaking to you, so you're either jealous or some negative nerd to say, well, nah, you shouldn't be on the internet. Who not? HRU. Because when I was polite, I call that a homo Hoover H. Hellish. It's a sheer drop in morals, intelligence, honesty, science, social science. Absolute evil fellow was that pedophile Hoover. So I want to prefer to start the day with a smile and a song, as I did this morning. I wasn't in my best voice, and I intend to sing that over again. I sang it before. I think I hit the last note especially. I practiced and was prepared to hit that last note, or I hit that last note the way I should. So I saw something here of 007. Oh, golly. Oh, that's right. See, because I've gone out of my way not to go where it originally started, but now I'm forced to go there. Just this past week. Just that's enforced now. I've been trying to avoid it, but so why not tell it the way it is? This is how it occurred. The only one who could fire Hoover was the president. Now, I put everything I could put forward as far as I like Ike. Became quite a slogan. I like Ike. Well, now who next? Well, if I was going to, and that was my plan and goal, I get a name in baseball and get into politics. Lincoln did it. He was self-educated. Maybe a Catholic Italian descent man could achieve that goal. You understand? The only way I figured I could do it is to have the Lincoln-Douglas debates at the presidential level. Do you understand? So I obtained a renaissance in the discipline of political science. And I always have to say, called dirty politics by most for obvious reasons. And that's how he won. Now, if I doing the best, why not? No, because Hoover had to be the top. He had the power. So it would really drive him a little wild that every time I suggested something, it was the best solution or a reasonable good solution to consider to improve our situation. And just about any discipline they threw at me. So my batting 1,000 especially. So I wanted to confer with Einstein. And he blocked that, because if I could work with Einstein, even secretively, he wouldn't have control, and he didn't like Einstein. Now, after a year, he said, well, everybody has to say, yeah, we do it his way. Now, let's see if Einstein backs down to him. So he let it go through after a year of me trying. And Einstein realized he either had to agree with me or say he was kind of like a phony liar. And to my surprise, Einstein went with what was science, not name. And he says, what you say, I agree with. And in fact, your suggestion that maybe we go into obtaining a valid unified field theory is real good. he said, this was after conferences, he says, but they tell me I can't work with you. And I said, I suspected that. But are we going to let the in charge of the secret police control scientists, what they can think and do and put forward? He thought a minute, and then to my surprise, he says, you're absolutely right. He said it angrily. He says, you're absolutely right. I don't care what he says. You call me same time, same day, same time, and we'll begin working on a unified field theory. Because I said, look, with my bold suggestions and your real good ability in mathematics and mathematical physics, I think we might be able to put forward a valid unified field theory. Do you understand? Well, when I called to begin the work, and this happens every time when I put exposing J. Edgar Hoover and just talk about exposing that criminally insane Hoover. His living secretary, who would take in shorthand and ask me questions so she was sure of the English, because it was a three-way conversation, and then she would talk to him in German. And I realized that when you do something in science and you do it in the language you do it in, then naturally you're going to think back as you did it that way and want to think that way and speak that way. With mine, it's that tough New York accent. With him, he wanted German. And so he would say, try to speak German. Well, he wouldn't say speak Italian, and I know why. Because Olinto de Plato put forward E equals mv squared. And they all say, oh, Einstein put forward E equals mc squared. They don't even know what they're talking about. Einstein stole Olinto de Plato's E equals mv squared, but then they changed it later to E equals mc squared. You understand? So he'd say, well, I'm trying to speak a little German. So I said, well, the only German I can speak at the moment is from my college days, Einstein's Sphere, who's going to buy the beer? And he laughed. Now, what happened to Einstein? He dropped dead the night before we were supposed to begin our work. Do you understand? Now, the representative that was going to expose him drops dead on the train before, with the speech in his hand before he can get off the train. Melvin Purvis, that hero, dies. Hoover said he shot himself. Melvin Purvis's wife says, you're a liar. I call Hoover not only a queer, I really start cussing at that criminally insane Hoover pedophile. President Kennedy gets shot before he can get reelected and fire Hoover. Do you understand? Reverend Martin Luther King gets fired the day I was supposed to put in an envelope to give him all the details where he could add mine to his goal to replace Hoover, because he knew what I suspected, that Hoover was a pass for white. And anybody who put that in the public died violently. There's a school teacher, Millie McGee, capital MC, capital Ghee, absolutely proves that Hoover was adopted, was sent up to Washington by the Hoovers, who had a plantation, and that's how he got up there in Washington. And he never had a birth certificate until finally one was produced years later. Experts said it's an obvious put together. It's not a genuine birth certificate. No, Martin Luther King knew that. And And Martin Luther King, I think, said, look, if push comes to shove, Hoover, I think you better not be so prejudiced against us blacks because they're getting killed, and you're at times the fault because you're extremely prejudiced. Now, Martin Luther King got shot the morning I was going to go to the post office with all the details to mail it. And when I looked at the newspaper, Reverend Martin Luther King shot. My opinion, look, politicians are politicians, but criminally insane Hoover, this man is a reverend. That isn't why I now say I'm Preacher Doc. I say I'm Preacher Doc because it's the greatest challenge. How did we get here? Why are we here? What best to do? And that's where I'm at. You understand? Then there's Bobby Kennedy. Nobody can compare with yours truly about Bobby Kennedy and why and how he was assassinated. But yet nobody knows who I am, and they don't dare have me put my true facts in the public. So I live a dangerous life. I'm not alive because Homo Hoover, that criminally insane pedophiliac, wanted me alive. Barely missed an accident of getting killed about half a dozen times. So I had sort of a slender, wiry, slender, and I realized I had terrific speed. Ty Cobb, the Georgia Peach. So I always liked the song about Georgia, the song Georgia, and then Stars Fell in Alabama. Those songs, and the great Jimmy Carter. Coincidence? My initials are JC. And I would always push, you mean to say we're never going to have a president from the South? This man is an expert in nuclear energy, and it's our number one concern. So what best to do? Right now, I'm forced to go to where 007 started, and this is the way it really started. I was working in engineering, civil engineering, and my duty was what they call the instrument man, especially with the Zeiss theodolite. This instrument magnifies at a distance and is precise. You can read it to portions of a second, not just by the second, by the old telescope type we had. The autolite, you could read it to a point, etc., of a second. Quite accurate. But there was, and they did it, where it's so fine that you wouldn't set it to zero like you would with the transit. So I worked with a man that wasn't educated, but he was a real good, practical party chief, they would call him, and I'm the instrument man. And we are to build now the water. The water comes from the mountain down these rocks with color lights on it now into the reservoir, where they then work from there for drinking water for San Fernando Valley and towards LA. Very important. Well, it's a great length. And with the transit, you read only to the second, and you're allowed so much air in a mile. By the time you got to that length, it might zigzag or be a couple of feet or more off. So he gave me the challenge with this old timer. And I said, well, if you trust me, I always wanted to try where I zero the theodolite. And then you can keep track, because he had limited knowledge of mathematics. He says, really? I says, well, let's try it. So I would zero the theodolite, and then he could keep track, because you do it 6 times. 3 times direct and 3 times it's inverted, so that you take out any error in this precision optical instrument. And I did that entire length within 1/4 of an inch. Well, when we turned in the notes, the engineer says, no, nobody can do this, no. You just wrote it that way. And the man says, look, I'm there. He says, no, do it over again. We can't accept this. So I don't look, are we going to do it over again? Just by boredom, we might get it worse than 1/4 of an inch. You what? I says, let's just change we'll go through it, walk through it, and we'll change the numbers. Yeah. So we changed the numbers, turn it in. Yeah, okay, they accepted it. This was me, what I achieved in civil engineering as an instrument man. Now, what did I achieve in mathematical physics? My capital C transformation equation that Einstein agreed to. Capital X prime equals capital X minus VT over the square root of 1 minus V squared over capital C squared, where capital C is equal to or greater than the velocity of light. Proved to him through a theoretical experiment. He used theoretical experiments, and he agreed. What have I done in inventions? You better believe I did the Xerox up in Webster, New York, where Friesman Court Experimental Development Lab did the work, gave it the name. You better believe I did a light exchange somewhere electromagnetic radiation. Futuristic, multi-purpose, coherent beam is my original work. It's #1 in the world today in modern science. Then who am I? But what best to do right now? You understand, you beautiful girls? Pardon me for expressing who I really am. Well, that's a smile and a song. And if anybody doesn't want to watch, don't watch. But those are the true facts. And it started then that when I brought my checks to where I went and bought groceries, I would joke with the girls, because I always thought that girls were getting not as much as they could or should. In fact, girls should be catered to. My philosophy, opinion, and what I prefer to do. So I would joke with them. And then it got to be kind of a standard where I would joke with them, they would joke with me. And when I cashed my checks, it was standard. They had to do that. I had to show my ID. And they say, what's your ID? Well, instead of them taking the time to read it, they would let you say what your ID was. And I'd say 007. And they say, what? 007. And I go, 007. I said, well, all right. Then after a while, I said, I'll kind of joke with them. I said, look, you girls say 007, but O is a letter. And I try to do things really as good as I can in science, mathematical physics. I says, it's a number, it's 007. So don't look at me when I say 007. It's you that say 007. Which reminds me of the joke of this man from Italy. And he says, well, I'm trying to learn English. He says, an English teacher says, I don't know. I don't think you can understand English. He says, you just speak a broken English. He says, well, they didn't teach me that it's the blue sky And there's a song, blue skies smiling at me. Nothing but blue skies do I see. So he says, they keep saying I gotta say blue skies. He says, but they tell me then it's the subject and then the verb, the predicate, the verb. He says that tells you the action of what you're talking about or describes it. So I say, it's sky blue. And he says, no, you speak broken English. It's blue skies. And I think about it. I don't speak broken English. He speaks with broken grammar because it's the sky is blue. Not that the blue is the sky. You understand? So we have been where I would say it's 007. And the girls would kind of tease back and say, you're 007. Do you understand? Well, now, my daughter, one of the main reasons I joke with him so much is my daughter worked for the same company, but not at that store, at the store next to it. So when one of the girls was working at that store where my daughter was, I went in there, and naturally, I'm going to joke around with my daughter. Those girls have to work with that, in that store like that, and handling all those groceries, and so forth. So I would really joke with her, and then when I went out, my daughter says, hey, that girl over there, they say at your store, you're the big old flirt. What? Yeah, that's that flirt from our store. And I told him, I said, no, he's just doing that to joke around because he's my father. Now, when they found out I was her father, and I went in that store, they would really tease me, see. And they said, you don't have to take out your ID. We know you're 007. You understand? Well, now Hoover took that as an inside joke. And he was working with the British intelligence all the time. So the two of them cooked up where they would have this agent, but if they made him American, with light eyes and my build and so forth, they say, hey, he's got a point there at least. If that isn't the truth, it's sure a coincidence. So they made him a tall actor, Brit. I think they give me, because the Brits would Hoover would steal my work. It was Xerox in the U.S., but it was ranked Xerox in England so they could make the money. Do you understand? So when this first movie came out, I said, I'm going to go to an afternoon show where there's not many people, get the best seat and really see this movie. When I saw the movie, about a tenth into the movie, I couldn't believe it. They have this big, tall actor, Englishman, with the English accent. He's in his 40s at least, shacking up with a young girl, her height, weight, hair color, eyes color, appearance, name. It's the same as my daughter. You criminally insane Hoover. How dare you, you gosh damn criminally insane. I got up, walked out. I've never seen another of their movies. Comes on TV, I change the channels. Don't watch anything that I call it the Brit 003 and a half-ass BS. Became a tremendous financial and sexual extravaganza. This is a half-ass Brit like the Nessie deal. Well, now, if I live, it wouldn't be exactly way Hoover planned it. I went to an Irish lawyer, in Washington, D.C. and told him these true facts. I told him the true facts at that time. And he listened. And he said, all right, he says, I've been listening to you, and of course you're telling the truth. He says, they have tried, including me, desiring or listening to other lawyers who try. Somebody has to get that Hoover fired, or at least replaced. I think we can do it. He says, but see the work I got on my desk? It's Monday. I'll get it all done by Friday. Friday at 5 o'clock, you come in, and we'll begin to legally get that Hoover out in that position. Okay. Now, I know Hoover's moving faster, more vicious against anybody that's going to replace him. So on Wednesday, I call to see if he's okay and that he'll keep the appointment Friday. When I call, it sounds like him, but it's not really him. And I says, well, are you this great lawyer? And he says, no, I'm his brother. Now, when it comes to brother, Hoover experimented my brother to death with the English intelligence. I go, wow. Well, where is he? He dropped dead last night. I dropped dead. I thought this is Wednesday. I talked to him Monday. He was in good health, good spirits, had no complaints. For Friday. He said, I talked to him yesterday. He was in great health, great spirits. He had no complaints. He says, but on the way home, all of a sudden I get a call and say, hey, your brother dropped dead. And not only that, they tell me, hey, I got to rush back because they're going to bury him Friday. Do you understand how fiendish Hoover was? When I went to this lawyer's office, I go in there, he wouldn't be there. Where is he? They're burying him. Preacher Doc. Now you understand what was going on secretly between criminally sane J. Edgar Hoover and his homo buddy, Clyde Tolson, and their little inner clique. Pyramid of power with Hoover at the top. And why did Hoover go with me first? Because I predicted Truman would win. And he laughed. He says, this time he can't say he's batting 1,000. This time I win. They celebrated. I wouldn't go to one of Hoover's parties. It was a homo party. Do you understand? So it was absolutely at the top. At the same time, he'd prefer get what he could and I would be dead. Well, the next morning when Truman won, he went a little wild, a little berserk. He says, I have supposedly the best PhDs, give him the top money, everything we need, and you let him beat me again. Still, all right, this is the way I do it from now on. I want to know what he's thinking, what he does first. I want to know that. I do what he says. Then if he makes a mistake, and if I want to, I'll get rid of him. And that's the way it was done. You girls have to know, because you have, I think, saved this USA. You have the children, you take care of them. The bum, gay blade, leaves and goes to the bar, leaving you and the children, and then some divorce judge with some divorce lawyers say, well, you have to work to support the children and you. No, I have universal pure Christians. When you marry a universal pure Christians, you sign a legal, binding document saying the children's, what they need come first. Then the wife, then the old man. Not these, some gay blade at the bar, and you got to struggle and take care of the kids. You understand? That's what I have to do now. And you women now, if you can, I say a woman should, in the USA, and I say the USA, for reasons. I think a girl can't do worse than Homer Hoover having the power. And the power he had over the presidents. And in an actor, Why an actor? I used to constantly hound Hoover. All you do is have somebody go up there and act, try to be president when you got the power. He's just an actor. Why don't you get an actor? Wow, out comes a fella that would get the votes. That's an actor. But what happened to him? They tried to knock him off after he got the vote. Isn't that correct? And who was there? Hoover's buddy. That Hoover, and arguing with me, show me his power. I say, you always do something left-handed. You're a left-handed monkey wrench. You got a fella play baseball, send them up in a cold winter up there in Minnesota or something, just to show me. Then the left-hander became prez. Why not get an actor? He got the vote, and then they tried to knock him off, and then all he was an actor, and they controlled. Now they have a fella that if he doesn't do what they wanna, he knows what will happen to him. Me, I didn't vote for him, and I wish him luck. But as far as I'm concerned, I hope he lives 100 years, and if they can vote for him 3 times and they want to, vote for him 3 times, whatever. But I thought the hero and his wife, who they exposed on purpose, remember? I forget his name at the moment. But he knew their inside dealings and would have been a better president than anybody I knew. And I pushed for that on the internet. And the internet was getting stronger and saying we should have an internet president. I said, well, I can't be bashful, especially my age. Consider me. Wow. Are they going to give me an opportunity just on the internet? I can get on the internet as Preacher Doc. And that kind of ruffles a lot of the feathers of the quacks they got in that FBI. They are quack artists. They're not as evil as Homo Hoover, but they are sicko quack artists with all of their games. You call them games they do. You girls, I think, have to notice, because maybe you should get a girl president. Couldn't do worse than that coward of Vietnam. It's a coward of Vietnam. What best to do? Well, right now it's to smile and sing a song 24/7 to you beautiful girls. I volunteered 5 times. Today, 5 times. Then I said, it's so bad, I'm going to volunteer 6th time, with the stipulation that if you don't give me a chance to go to Vietnam to see what I can do there, because here Hoover had the control, then I'm going to back. That's up to Hoover. He's on his own. What happened? Hoover lost. Not the troops who were most gallant, or the commanders, or people here. It was Hoover, because then you could get directly what was occurring on the battlefield. You can get pictures in your office of directly what was happening on the battlefield. Hoover lost. Now they won't make that mistake. They go where it's desert and they got planes and tanks against a misfit ragtag army, and they get other countries even to help them against this little country. The big USA against this little country, and they get other countries to help them. You get all control of all the air and tanks and everything. And the commander of our forces says, he said, what do you think about? He says, look, what I have here is I can get a group of Boy Scouts and beat them. You understand? That he says, oh, look, beat them. Hey, they have a theocracy. That is, they run their country from their religion. It's a theocracy. Over here we say we have a democracy. what democracy was secretly what Hoover at the point of a pyramid of power with that coward of Vietnam that he said, I got the troops there. He put them there purposely. Then he says, I got the troops there. If I don't use them, I'll lose them. What hypocrisy. You put them there and then use the excuse, well, you put them there, you got to use them or you lose them. No, you're going to lose some of them, and now there's even girls in the service there. You're going to lose them and millions of those you killed. And then it came out, even in the House of Commons, that the British intelligence, working with Slick Willie Webster, Slick Willie Webster, and that British intelligence phonied the reports. So when it went to Congress, I think they finally got one vote more they needed. Said, all right, go to war against Iraq. That's the way it was done. I risked my life on the internet, like right now. Right now I'm risking my life, of course, saying that they're lying. I know Hoover murdered my brother. The sheer pain and suffering, horror and of my family. The families are going to have that the rest of their life of losing somebody's sons and daughters. And then some of them actually went public and said they didn't get killed, they got murdered. That wasn't me. Going from town to town, saying, hey, my son didn't get killed, he was murdered. And that coward of Vietnam was the chief at the time. Those are the true facts. Now, what is really best to do at this time? You girls protect yourself. Don't wait for anybody to protect you, because they won't. I know, maybe you can prove, but you got to prove, you got to go into the court of law. You got to go into a federal court. Federal court, they get the best lawyers to defend against you, against their crimes. You got to get them to investigate themselves, to say they committed the crime, to take them to federal court, have the millions it takes, it's called a constitutional attorney. These attorneys are the best. They're usually the college professors, most expensive. And then after all of that, especially if you go just before a judge, they can control the judge. Or even a jury, they can get one or two they can put in the jury. So, what best to do? You get a guard dog, a dog that if somebody tries to kill you or attack you, you get a dog that will really attack that murderer and kill him or get him down so he stays still and don't try to attack you. Or you get a firearm. Because if I had a firearm, I could have maybe saved a black girl. There were blacks who were down in the center of L.A. They grabbed this attractive black girl, and she's struggling, and they throw her in the back seat. And I turn around because I'm not in charge, and I have to be very careful because I had a tough time just trying to get work, any kind of work to support my family and myself. And I said, let's do something. Let's call the police. Fellow says, quiet. I don't know. I said, let's call the police. He said, hey, we're working. No. So I said, well, look. He says, yeah. He says, I saw him punch her. He says, and he kind of smiled. He says, that happens down here all the time. It's got nothing to do with us. We do our work. He was a Hoover's agent, tall, big fella, in charge. That's the way they did it. They almost always had some big, tall fella in charge over me. Because I took boxing, and in college I won my weight class. So they knew that if push came to shove, they better have somebody that maybe I wouldn't knock down because I got in big trouble. Somebody insulted my daughter, and it turned out to be a one-punch fight. I hit him so hard, he went down and couldn't get up. So they took money, and that was the first time they took a home from me. Now they took my home away because of employment got so bad. I got behind in the payments, and then they added and kept adding until I couldn't make the payments. And I said, look, you keep saying I got to make the fines, and how can I make the payments? They says, well, we're taking the home. I says, well, I now got where I can make the payments. And they thought about it. I said, we'll let you know. He says, no, because they passed a law saying that if you get a new homeowner, they passed a law that if they didn't pay for it, the government guaranteed the loan. So the banks could take my home, which was real good, what I needed in an area I needed, because now I'm elderly. I have severe back injuries. All the while I've been talking to you, yeah, my back injuries, my legs, my neck, I just grin and bear it. I needed that home. No, they said, here's what we'll do. We'll pay you money, because, yeah, you did fix up the home and clean and all that, so we don't have to clean it, but you have to move out. We won't accept you making the payments because you owe us on the fines. I says, but you put it up for auction. You put it up for auction, from what I see, it's going to sell for $100,000 less than I'm willing to keep the original agreement and make the payments. They says, that's our decision, you're out. Well, the reason is because then they get somebody in there that they know after a year maybe won't make the payments. Or if there's a divorce, the woman can't keep up a home that I had and make payments and support her children and herself. No way. So they could take the home back, got the loan paid, sell it to somebody else. So one bank did that 5 times with the same house. Hey, they said they're doing something illegal. You understand? They don't care. I'm a veteran. I've done as much and more as many disciplines as any man in the history of the U.S. And I want to know the record of the FBI. There wasn't one. They were just investigators with somebody in charge of that office. But they did the investigation, and then it was handed to the Justice Department lawyers who would then go over it legally as to what to do. Yes, they were, until Hoover gradually got where he was director, and they got so powerful, when I went in the Justice Department, they would shake and tremble. If I said, you're the Justice Department, he's supposed to be under you. And they'd look at me, say, hey, that fellow has the power. You're the president. You can't do anything with that fellow. Because I told them, look, you call him down here to your office. He's the one that says lie detectors are 100%. I want to use lie detectors. Let's have lie detectors. I say, yeah, let's have lie detectors. He and I take lie detectors and see who's telling the truth. Everybody stopped working. They all stopped, turned around, looked at, wow. And then, because I talked to the supervisor, Manny, him and Han, he says, well, he says, actually, he says, they would force me to defend Hoover because he works, as you say, theoretically, under the Justice Department, so we're obligated to defend him. I says, well, he commits crimes against my family and me, violating my constitutional rights, the Bill of Rights, where what I do is mine. And then if I take him to law, you, the Justice Department for the people, are going to defend him? He says, that's the way it's going to be. So what can you do, girls? They don't care. And I'll say this once more. They purposely had girls killed to get the evidence to do it their way on a fella that Hoover knew was killing girls. Don't rely on the you get a guard dog and or a firearm. And if they come at anybody tries to kill or rape you like that black girl, if I had a gun, I would have killed all 4 of them, or as many as I could, so that they release her. But big, tall, that you girls want to have a big, tall football hero. The measure of a man is how real good the man is. And especially if the man takes religious vows that says he will be married to you for life. But you get it in writing, so that if the fella turns out to be a gay blade, you at least then will have the support that is critical for your family and you. So this is who I really am, and I'm going to still start each day with a smile. Taking a chance here. I'll present that next. Put a little poetry concerning expose of the true facts by Preacher Doc. Thank you, and have fun.